live interactive demo. So it's meant to be interactive, which means ask questions in the chat throughout the webinar, ask questions in the Q&A as we go along as well. But before I kick it off, what I wanted to do was throw up a poll for everyone that's with us today. And this is just kind of an off the top question. And this poll is, which AI assistant do you currently use or do you prefer to use? There's a lot of kind of like polarizing opinions about which one's better. And honestly, whichever one you feel most comfortable working with, I would say just stick with it. Today, we're focusing on Claude and our integration with Claude and Clockwork, but we also have an integration with ChatGPT, and they're currently testing with Copilot and Gemini as well. I don't know about you, Rob, but I personally prefer Claude just because we've been working in it for the last couple of months, and I find it easier to use than chat sometimes. And it gets things, sometimes it gets things a little bit off, but that's true of any sort of agentic AI tool that we're working with. But do you have a specific preference, chat versus Claude at all?
I find myself calling out chat more frequently when doing some research but it seems to be every couple of months or even every like 4 to 6 weeks, kind of leapfrogging each other and who I'm using back and forth. So I'm back and forth between the two. I have enjoyed using Claude more, but more so work related for me.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's end this poll and let's share the results so that everybody can see, just to get an idea of benchmarking what get used across the industry. So it looks like Claude Anthropic, 44% of everyone that's attending today, that's kind of their preferred tool, followed by ChatGPT. A quarter of you guys joining us today prefer that, followed by Copilot, 12%, Gemini, 16%. I personally struggle with Gemini. I do. I'm probably using it improperly and wrong. But that's interesting that Gemini would be a number three over Copilot. And then, of course, there's always an other, Perplexity or other tools out there as well. So let's go ahead and hop into it. I wanted to start today with our recent launch of our MCP server. And this MCP server is what enables Clockwork or any executive search platform or any platform you use really to connect to Claude or to connect to ChatGPT in an effective way. So what is an MCP server and why is it important? An MCP server is a model context protocol server that acts as a bridge between your data, wherever it lives. In this case, we're talking about Clockwork and Claude Chat, your AI assistant application. And it allows you to securely connect your AI assistant to Clockwork, for example, and use and leverage information in real time, perform tasks, pull data, build reports, um, and really kind of capture and leverage all that information that you have in real time instead of copying it from Clockwork or wherever you're doing your work into chat or into Claude and then using it piecemeal to kind of sandwich together, kind of piece together prompts with limited context. So this MCP server, which we launched earlier this month, really enables Claude or Chat or whatever you're using for your agentic AI assistant to securely connect and read and understand your data with much deeper context instead of just pasting it in. So what's the difference between an MCP server versus just pasting your data in? I like to think of it as two different examples. One, you can think of it as like a puzzle, or you can think about it as the legend of a map. So your data it logs important events, milestones within Clockwork or your executive search environment. It's a repository of a ton of information, contact details, search data, metadata, company data, all of this data. And your data are the pieces of one larger, bigger puzzle. Now, the issue with that is that your data, just looking at it, lacks deeper human context and it's stale as soon as you leave the platform. So your data, think about your data as the puzzle pieces, thousands of data points that require some sort of visual or human intervention. And together they form a complete object or a complete picture, but unstructured. All the pieces are there and it's just kind of a free for all. So without an MCP, if you're just copying your data into chat or into Claude, the AI assistant has to kind of make a lot of assumptions and guess about how these pieces fit together. Now, with an MCP server, it enables Claude or Chat or your AI assistant to make sense of those capabilities and understand all of those pieces of data, all of those pieces of the puzzle. It's designed for your AI assistant to use a standardized format and provide much deeper context of how it all works together, how it all should fit together, and eliminates the necessary steps of making assumptions around your data or how these pieces fit together. It tells the AI assistant application how to use your data. Think about it as the MCP server is kind of like the picture on the box of the puzzle of this is how it's supposed to look like. This is where the pieces fit together. It tells the AI assistant application what's inside, explains what tools, capabilities, processes, actions are available to it, and describes what to expect for the results. So with an MCP server, the AI assistant understands your data and more importantly, how to interact and how to read it. Another example outside of this puzzle example or analogy is think about it like a map. On a map, you have different symbols that mean train stop, river, firehouse, road, dotted lines, borders, boundaries. Looking at the map, someone who's unfamiliar with kind of reading a map would be like, okay, there's a bunch of different places and things here. I don't know what they mean. The MCP server serves as kind of the legend or the key and gives you context, gives you visual cues of what you're looking at on this map in this bigger picture, in this bigger set of data, and how to use that data effectively to make informed decisions. So with that being said, we launched our MCP server back at the beginning of this month, and that is what enables Claude or Chat or any of your agentic AI assistants to successfully and deeply connect to your Clockwork data, understand its context, understand how to use it, and understand where to go with it. So what are the possibilities of using something like Claude with an MCP server for Clockwork or Chat and using Clockwork's MCP server? One thing that I like to remind a lot of people, and I fell into this trap too when I was speaking to our product team months ago about the MCP server, working with AI and an MCP server really requires kind of a shift in mindset. It's no longer about features and what it can do, but the capabilities of what's not possible, essentially. So you can use Claude or use Chat for building pipeline health reports. These are just examples. Generating a market map using your Clockwork data and other data sources out there on the web, building client updates and reports on a regular, scheduled, consistent basis, or even something as simple as candidate sequencing. So that being said, let's hop into it and let's ask Claude what Claude can do for us with our Clockwork MCP server. And that being said, I'll hand it over to Rob. Again, if you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the chat or drop them in the Q&A. And if you have to hop at any point, we'll show the recording as well, so you can always reference it at another point. And that being said, Rob, take it away whenever you're ready.
Thanks. And I think one key thing that you brought up is also consistency and how we're actually approaching what we're prompting out of our platform. So thinking of your firm actually leveraging AI, leveraging that data, and as we've just recently rolled this out, this is something that we've been beta testing with a lot of our firms from a various size, from single seat solopreneurs to our largest or some of our largest firms using Clockwork. So getting the full scope, and Thaddeus will mention this toward the end of things, but actually creating a playbook and prompts and how we can really get the most out of the Clockwork side of things. Whereas this conversation will focus on that a bit more broadly speaking and some of those ideas and ways to actually leverage that. So maybe I'll first just type in and ask my Claude, what can we even do? I know
Mhm.
Thaddeus mentioned a couple of ideas and ways that we could use this, but let's ask Claude and see what comes up. So looking at some of those MCP data work, I'll focus there, maybe not so much as some of my internal tasks, since this is what I'm using for work as well. But in thinking about how can I leverage that data and work within as few systems as possible, at least from bouncing back and forth. And that's really key for us on this. So as I go through, one thing that actually stands out and what people speak to me most about is generating status reports. For any of you that have been on these conversations or webinars before, Thaddeus and I often talk about generating reports for your clients, inviting them into the Clockwork portal. But for those of you that have your own collateral, your own templates, your clients don't want a portal to log into, how can we easily generate that and extract that data without having to make it such a manual process? So if I think about that, I'll actually ask Claude to generate me a project status report for the demand president MCP search. And actually, before I do that, I'll say using this template. And if you
Okay.
guys give me 1 second, I'll upload a template that I have.
Because every firm has their own sort of like custom branded template that their clients love and that they love to use in client communications and data. So what we're literally doing is just taking that template and dropping it into Clockwork or dropping it into Claude, excuse me, and then letting Claude kind of use that as guidance for the final output, right?
And I think that's really important to think about keeping your own branding and identity, but leveraging the data you have. And how do we bridge that gap from having to extract data into an Excel sheet, copy that into a template, all of the hours just for the next day, there's an update and we
Hmm.
have to recreate that, or every week we're sending that to our client. And in the meantime, just for a moment while this is happening, what I am going to do is just hop into that search in Clockwork to show you just while we actually build this out and are going through that status report.
Okay.
So, not to spend too much time within Clockwork in this webinar as much as we usually do, but here's my status report where I have my candidates. I can break them down by different statuses. I can include information on here. Within Clockwork, there's a lot of customization and configuration that we can do in order to share with our client. But
Mhm.
again, in exporting that, you're somewhat limited to how we export that data. And if we want to do it with our own branding, and again, your own template, your own twist on things that keep things unique, then this bridges that gap without having to build that into Clockwork or go spending that time back and forth extracting that data. Now, for me, when I go back into Claude and share that, just to scroll up a bit, Claude's going to prompt and actually let us know, pulling all of that information, specking this to our template.
Mhm.
Now, of course, Thaddeus and I are going to use our Clockwork template that's going to have the same colors.
Yeah.
But just to get a sense of this here, when I'm looking at this report, I can always tweak this and prompt from Claude what I want to see. So for me, I have my report that's just been last updated today from a project I started last week, an overall snapshot of what's going on. And yes, we'll see this data flag. That's just Thaddeus and I making sure that we keep data privacy. So we're mixing up names, and that's what Clockwork is going to be referencing. Claude is going to be looking for any discrepancies in data in notes, really, again, getting into all of the information you have in your search. We can also pull individual statuses, individual pages. So right here, I've generated that project status report that we looked at in Clockwork, but where I think we can really leverage this in Claude and thinking more broadly into how do we have AI support the full function of your workflow?
Hmm.
This schedule tab up here gives me the ability for Claude to generate this on a regular cadence. So again, eliminating that manual work, prompting AI for data from Clockwork, but then being able to say, I want this report every Wednesday at 2 p.m. in my inbox with any statuses, updates that have changed. So, in thinking at first, when Thaddeus and I were talking about this, going into Claude and asking it to generate a report every week, every day, fantastic. If we can actually just go in and have Claude regularly generate that, now we're eliminating even more manual work and prompting that consistency across the firm. Where we have that template, we're pulling that right information. Now, in the instance of a status report, that's great. But if we want to go in and actually start a new conversation and say, what can you pull via the MCP on people? And maybe we want to pull that targeted list, start generating more prompts for building an email campaign. So as I'm asking specifically for the MCP, you're going to see a little bit more behind the scenes detail, but
Mhm.
giving us that snapshot of understanding their record, candidacy history, being able to look for individuals or based on roles, based on titles. So if I wanted to search for all of my CFOs and just being mindful that I'm getting close to my session limit, I'm just going to go over and take a quick look and take a look at maybe a prompt that I pulled earlier.
Okay.
So just before we hopped into this, again, thinking of what can we pull from that people tab? How can we actually leverage that? Going through. And the beautiful thing about this is Claude is going to be conversational with you. So I prompted it to pull all CFOs that I know. Well, maybe we don't want to pull people in do not contact. So again, using AI for that ability to help you narrow down what you want to do and get more intuitive with the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
From here, I just asked Claude to build me a targeted email campaign. Maybe I specifically want to reach out to these people. And generating that is great, but I do want to broaden this a bit and just go into what you mentioned earlier, Thaddeus, and thinking of how can we actually use Clockwork, Claude, or whatever AI and a broader scope of our full workflow. So, since this isn't going to give away any of my secrets, just my connectors right here,
Yeah.
being able to create a campaign and do some outreach via HubSpot, automate those emails that I want to send through. Maybe that weekly status report that we want to share with our client gets slacked to the team internally to review, put some input on, make sure everything is good to go. Thinking about this from all levels at your firm. Maybe a partner needs a regular weekly status update on all projects, where Thaddeus needs a client-facing report generated every Monday that he sends out. Thinking of
Marketing.
ways that we can automate data in that workflow. Exactly. Just I'm going to send all this to you via Slack.
Right. But even if you head back to that screen really quickly, Rob, thinking about the action that you were prompting Claude with for building out a business development sequence, the really important thing to consider with an MCP server and using Claude with Clockwork specifically is that Clockwork houses all of that firm intelligence. And what I mean by that is those are all the breadcrumbs of information, relationships, data, notes that you personally, privately have on candidates, companies, people's clients. All of that data that's specific to your firm and proprietary to your firm, which is why your clients hire you, lives within Clockwork. So even thinking about something as simple as a business development outreach campaign, we can take that information, leverage those insights, leverage that intelligence, and then apply it to a business development sequence outreach. So even asking Claude something as simple as, and I'm not going to have you run through this prompt now because I know that we're up on time, but even having Claude look at your Gmail inbox or look at your calendar and understanding when was the last time I spoke to this candidate, when's the last time I spoke to this client even, and even leveraging things as basic as searching the web, like what's been going on with my client who I haven't talked to in, 2 years. What's been happening with them? What recent achievements have they gotten or been bestowed that I can use as a shoe in to starting this conversation of business development using Claude and using this outreach sequence as well. So there's a ton of opportunity, not only with Clockwork itself, but being able to use all of the other tools available to you and Claude and using it all in conjunction together. So the secret and really the beauty of the MCP server is being able to leverage that Clockwork data in a really impactful way.
I think that's a really great point that you make, Thaddeus, is keeping your data accessible in your AI platform and taking other actions that are outside of Clockwork without having to continue to go back and forth on all of these. So
Mhm.
being able to do that work on a regular basis in Clockwork and having that data pulled directly into Claude to help broaden what you're actually capable of doing. I think we
Definitely.
have a couple of chats, so I just want to pull those up. And I know Thaddeus has a few more things to share as well.
Yep.
Um, that Claude connector, sharing the link. Thaddeus is going to be sending out collateral to everyone regarding this webinar, regarding the MCP. So stay tuned for that afterwards.
Yeah. So
And
Mateo, if you are a current Clockwork user, I can send you the directions for setting it up. It's slightly different between the instance owner, so the person who owns or created the Claude account, kind of like that partner or admin level user. There's some steps that they have to walk through. It's just literally adding the MCP server link, and then everyone that waterfalls down in their team is able to connect it through the connector. So I'll share those with you. And then Heather, your question is, what guardrails do you introduce into the Claude effort, and how often do you review the reports created for accuracy? That's a great question. And one thing that I like to tell everyone and that everyone should consider is that even though AI and Claude and chat are connected through an MCP server, regardless of how tight that data is, AI can always make mistakes. So anytime you ask a prompt Claude to generate something, whether it's a report, anything along those lines, I always tell people take that first draft with a grain of salt. Again, I've used Claude to generate many of these reports that we looked at today with Rob, and it takes me about two or three kind of goes at it to get it to a final state. So something to keep in mind is that whatever it's generating for you, always keep that top of mind that AI can make mistakes and usually does the first time around.
and
Um,
before you get to the next question, just to quickly piggyback off that, Heather, once I create that report with that template and tweak it, continue to prompt from Claude how I want that, any tweaks, I can ask Claude to put this to its memory so I can reference that report again and then generate a new or updated version of that. So initially setting up those templates, tweaks, prompts, and then reviewing that is going to put you in a better position to have some more consistency moving forward as well.
Definitely. There's a couple more questions actually. Let's hop on those before we conclude
Yeah,
today.
if one more that comes up, I would say every day for me. So I'll read it out loud, Thaddeus, to hear your response. Thoughts for when we'll be able to write
Oh gosh.
into Clockwork from Claude. If you'd like me to give my first response, I'm happy to.
Sure, go ahead. You can go first, Rob.
Okay. It is something that we are evaluating currently and determining what level of capability we want to offer and what guardrails or at least um, approval there would be so that someone doesn't go in and change Thaddeus's name to Bill on every single record. So we're
Yep.
very mindful of that. I know that there are ways that you could go in and have AI take action to then copy and paste into Clockwork, but right now we are going through how much we would want to give that capability and what guardrails we can enable in place. So I can't say more to that because Thaddeus and I are not in that decision making, but it's something that has been in consideration for us for quite some time, and we're continuing that conversation.
And right now, the integration between Claude and Chat and Clockwork through the MCP server is just read only. Ideally, I would love if it could create, edit, update records. But again, it's a very personal preference, firm by firm and user by user. So ideally, further down the road, yes, absolutely, agentically can edit, make changes, read, write in Clockwork, but at present it is read only. But even still, with that read only capability and being able to look through our candidacies, look through our projects, and then apply that intelligence, apply that knowledge to other aspects and other activities happening across your workflow within Gmail or your inbox, or searching the web, or even previous past meetings that you've had with candidates and clients. Like, it's still incredibly powerful. One thing I wanted to drop in the chat for everyone before we kind of move on is that part of the deal of kind of registering for this webinar today is that you would receive a link to a copy of our playbook. And we've developed this AI prompt playbook with executive recruiters in mind. So if you're curious about kind of like what we looked at today, specifically for Claude, again, we can cover things. We can also connect Clockwork to ChatGPT. But here's a link that we dropped in the chat for anyone that is curious about what else is possible, if you will. And it's like pretty much anything is possible at this point. Um, but it's a reference for you there. We'll also include it in the recording that we'll send out after the webinar concludes. So feel free to have a look at that. Play around with Claude, connect it to Clockwork if you're a Clockwork user. Um, and again, if you have any questions, you can always get a demo with Rob. So let's put up a final poll actually. Let's see, here's the Claude or Chat GBT one. All right, next steps. So we're at time right now, but we were only able to cover a handful of things that's possible with Claude and the MCP server and connecting it to Clockwork. So I'd love to offer anyone that's still with us today the opportunity to get on a demo with Rob, see a much more in-depth contextualized overview of how you potentially use Claude and how it can potentially impact your workflows or accelerate or even transform your workflows as a Clockwork firm. So I'm going to leave that poll up for just a little bit longer. If you are not comfortable answering the poll, you can always visit our website, and then there's a little request a demo or schedule a demo button in the top right corner where you can pick a time and meet with Rob at any time that's available or convenient for you. So that being said, let's leave this poll up for a couple more seconds. Okay, we'll end this now. And again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Robert here at clockworkrecruiting.com. This QR code sends you to our contact us page where you can calendar and schedule directly with Rob to learn more about the MCP server, what's possible with Claude, Chat, and Clockwork. Again, this recording is going to be shared with everyone that's with us today. And if you didn't make it, we'll share it with you as well. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Rob directly. Any final words, Rob, before we hop off?
Every day I'm learning about the capabilities that we have with the MCP server. So knowing that this is always going to continue to expand as well as grow with input from our firms. I'm excited to continue to explore that and share with all of you. Can definitely get into more detail on a one-on-one conversation. Hard to
Yeah,
go through all of that, building out new reporting in 10, 15 minutes. So thanks for everyone that joined in on this conversation.
awesome. All right, take care, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys.